this,
Nope.
Jeremy?
No, I didn't.
So this dude saddled up his horses with a ton of food and gear
Wow.
for the victims of the hurricane and just marched on over to North Carolina, bro.
Are you
Outdoor
serious?
style.
Damn.
Pretty epic.
Did he
That's a
say
lot of
how
horses.
long of a trip that was?
Nope, not in this clip anyway. So I thought that was cool, right? To see a human-to-human response rather than just crying, "Big Daddy government, come save us."
Right.
It's like, we can save us. We're all in this together. We got each other's backs. There was a lot of awakening to that idea that I saw all over social media of like, we don't need the government to help us. Yeah, we're watching them. What was it? Sent like 150 million or 147 million to, I believe, Ukraine, like 2 days after the hurricane. Just like this huge slap in the face to everyone in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And people were just shaking their heads, understandably so. Like, how could our government abandon us like this? We saw it with Lahaina as well. And so people are just getting sick of it. And it's like, the solution isn't to cry hard enough that Big Daddy government comes and saves us. It's to find our own ways to save each other and save ourselves. That's what, the collective consciousness in not just America, but everywhere in the world is trying to learn. And it's, there's this gradual awakening, right? That at this point, I would say is really not so gradual. It's pretty much everywhere that people are waking up to the fact that we have a sort of corrupt political class who has hijacked our government and is performing essentially money laundering through all kinds of different forms, proxy wars overseas, open borders, the pharmacy industry, printing fake money, many other ways we can mention, right? It's like land pirates have hijacked our government and they're pretending to be our government officials so that they can keep their ruse going. But people are waking up to like, these aren't real leaders. These aren't really the people we've elected. And so instead of, playing victim anymore of like, why is this happening to us? How do these evil people get into power? It's so unfair. We just can't stop them. Boo-hoo. Instead of doing that, it's like, no, we have to take responsibility, right? At what point do we take responsibility for the position that our country's in, right? Politically and in the government. When do we say, look, we allowed this to happen? We're not victims. We, the people, allowed this corruption to continue right before our eyes from the 1920s forward, right? Or, 1913, really. We've allowed all these shenanigans to go on unchecked. We've allowed these corrupt politicians to infiltrate our country while we've turned a blind eye to it. We've seen this kind of corruption for decades in our country. This isn't anything new. We've known our government is very corrupt for a long time. I mean, most people knew that they assassinated JFK back in the 60s. It's 80 years ago now. But it's an inconvenient reality, right? That most people don't want to acknowledge. And that's the spiritual bypassing component is like, yes, nobody wants this to be true. Nobody would want to make this up if it wasn't true. It's an inconvenient fact, but that's how all healing is, right? Nobody wants to admit they have a big blockage in the area of self-worth or whatever, but you have to look at those blockages in yourself if you're going to heal them. And so Americans have kind of done this, right? Is continually bypassing the obvious corruption for many decades now. And so of course it has to reach a tipping point where we're now forced to reckon with it, right? We don't have the luxury anymore of ignoring the corruption of our government, because if we don't do something about it, we're going to end up with a pretty terrible communist totalitarian world that we're going to then leave to our children and say, sorry guys, we couldn't do anything about it ourselves or didn't want to. So why don't you guys hopefully take care of this problem? Good luck. And we leave our children a planet that is far worse off than ours was. I don't know about you, but I don't want to do that. And I think most people listening don't want to do that. So we have to get involved in some way in order to fix this mess. And to me, that's just the perfect catalyst for unity. That's what the Creator is really doing by allowing this corruption to get exposed. It's kind of shocking, isn't it? Especially because the Kamala Harris administration is running for president right now, and she's currently the sitting vice president, that there would be a disastrous hurricane on American soil, and they wouldn't I don't know exactly what aid they sent. I just saw a video interview today of a panel of people from North Carolina saying, we haven't been sent our $750. No one I know has been able to qualify for it. Everybody that applies for it and says, hey, my home got destroyed, I lost everything, can I, apply for this handout? And they're getting denied. So it's like they sort of just offered it as lip service. Like, look, we're going to help. We're going to give everybody $750. You lost your house, your car, your everything, but you could go buy an iPhone 8.
It's insanely disrespectful.
It's super disrespectful, but it's a good thing because we need people to wake up to this kind of corruption. And it was just kind of shocking to me that they would pull a stunt like that while she's running for president, and then 2 days later send more hundreds of millions of dollars to another country overseas. And it woke people up. People got angry. And that, even though that's not the highest frequency we can come from, collective anger can spark awakening and unity as well. Yeah. God works through that as well. So it's like we the people have to unite first. We can't expect them to do it on our behalf. It's our first order of business before any real change can be created. We got to take responsibility for what we've allowed to happen. We're not victims. We have to begin coming together and respecting each other, helping, loving each other, despite our differences. And then the second thing we have to do, I think, after we unite, is become truly self-sufficient and stop outsourcing everything to governments and corporations, as we kind of just touched on with the crypto conversation, because we collectively have to stop trading our freedoms for conveniences. We have to build new systems, right? We, the people, have to allow each other to be our caretakers. And that's the only way forward into the new earth. We have to become self-responsible, a self-responsible civilization, and look out for one another. This is basic herd animal intelligence, right? Even herd animals in the wild understand this law and they follow it obediently, that there's power in unity. Look at wolf packs or lion prides. Humans are also a herd animal. And although we've ceased to be herd animals in at least, recent years in the technology era of civilization, we still are fundamentally herd animals in that we need each other, right? If every human disappeared off the earth, Jeremy, and I was the only one left, I probably wouldn't live very long. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I need other people to live. I need all the systems of humanity depend on everybody else. So it's like humans are the only herd animal on this planet that seems to not understand the importance and the power of unity and treating others how we want to be treated, having each other's backs. There's great power in that. And so long as you're here to really help others, you gain the protection of the whole group. And then likewise, if you harm others, you'll be kicked out of the group. So sort of like decentralization incentivizes fairness, unity amongst groups incentivizes fairness, because when you step out of line, you lose that group protection and support. So it kind of creates its own perfect justice system of like the onus is on you. It's to your best benefit to be a part of this unity and be of service to others, because then everyone else is going to be of service to you. This is what humanity is learning through things like these hurricanes, when we've seen this massive effort, this kind of grassroots effort, right? From people like these people we just watched on horseback, people on helicopters going in. We heard those stories of, Good Samaritan helicopter pilots going in there to rescue people. And then I think it was the local police came in and said, if you save one more person, we'll arrest you. Did you see that video?
No.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, man. It's a father and a son he's a helicopter pilot. He went in, he was saving people. And it was really kind of sad because there was this elderly couple stuck in their home. They ran out of food. They were a day or two away from death. And he was able to rescue the wife and took her to safety. And when he landed, the police were there and they were like, sirens on, and they took him aside and they're like, you're not allowed to save people here. This is our jurisdiction to save people. And he's like, but you guys aren't, and people are dying. So like, I want to help. And they're like, we'll throw you in jail if you do that, if you fly this helicopter up there again. So we had to look at this poor woman, elderly woman, and say, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I can't go save your husband, or I go to jail and I have to pay all these fines. And so her husband didn't get rescued by him. And there's all these stories of like people trying to help out and the corrupt institutions still trying to get in the way. But it's like, what a great step, right? You see the way that people in times of crisis, and we saw this in 9/11 and anytime there's a big crisis, that's what always stokes the flames of unity in our country, in the hearts of our citizens. And it's like unfortunate that we need to have these kinds of mega disasters to finally unite. But it's like whatever it takes at the end of the day, I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And it's easy to react from that kind of first order response of anger or whatever it is. But I think one of our main intentions with this show that we try to consistently come back to is like the deeper implications. And when everything's rainbows and butterflies, it's not really much of a catalyst for spiritual evolution. Right. So as much as it can seem like that's a negative topic, I agree with you. I think it's incredibly positive, and I think that everything is actually quite positive.
Yeah. And the last bit on this I want to touch on is the weather modification component of this conversation, because that was, again, a big talking point in the collective. And I'm going to play this short from the PBD podcast where he did a whole segment on exposing. Did you see
Grant Cardone as well?
I didn't. No, I didn't see that. He was
saying, I've lived in Florida for whatever, my whole life, 25 years, something like that. And he's like, I've never seen a hurricane like come on this quick and move in this direction, blah, blah, blah. Like basically insinuating that it was engineered.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of prominent people have been saying that. Yeah. And there's actually a clip I'll play. Did you see any of the clips of like the airplane radar videos of these planes that were flying right in front of the hurricane's path and doing these weird zigzag patterns in front of it and then dipping out of the way? You didn't see this?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna show you. But let's play this clip from PBD first.
You ready for this? By the way, just brace for impact, because you're gonna say there's no way this is true. It's called Operation, I believe, Cyrus. On the afternoon of October 13, 1947, an Air Force B-17 aircraft penetrated a hurricane 415 miles away east of Jacksonville and dumped several pounds of crushed dry ice into the storm just to see what would happen. This was the first attempt to modify a tropical cyclone by seeding it with freezing nuclei, found the hurricane center nearly 100 miles west of where they expected it to be. To their astonishment, the hurricane had made a 135-degree left turn. On top of that, it was strengthening. By the afternoon of the 15th, Hurricane King struck Savannah, Georgia. One person died in the storm surge. $2 million in damages was done in Georgia and South Carolina. The public was outraged that the scientists had caused the storm to swerve into Georgia, and threats of lawsuits were thrown around. GE's case was not held when the head of its laboratories, Dr. Irving Langmuir, issued a statement that he was 99% sure the storm had changed course due to what? Seeding. You ready for this? By the way, just brace for impact.
Created Hurricane Helene. What I am saying is that the government has been manipulating the weather since 1947. What first caught my attention with Helene was the shift in the storm's projected path. One day it looked like it would hit my town. The next day it had shifted east. I then noticed an odd flight path of NOAA 42, the aircraft being flown, a Lockheed Martin Orion P-3. This prompted me to look at previous uses for the P-3, where I discovered that they were used in the 1960s to manipulate Hurricane Camille in a, quote, weather.
Wow.
Now I know this sounds out there, but as we begin to see more and more the terrible things our government has done in the past, is it really so far-fetched? Here are the projections from the 23rd of September. A large spread traveling the Alabama-Georgia line and ending up in Illinois. On the 24th, projections shift slightly east, and the storm is projected to finish in Indiana. On the morning of the 25th, the path shifts back west and shows to be finishing in western Kentucky. That evening, a P-3 conducts a 6-hour operation inside the developing storm.
Wow.
The next morning, on the 26th, the path shows to have shifted slightly east again, now finishing in northwestern Tennessee. The evening of the 26th, the same P-3 conducts operations throughout Hurricane Helene as it makes landfall, and the storm's actual path.
It's a strange flight pattern.
Oh my God.
What would the government's motivations possibly be to modify a storm? That I don't know. But I do believe that if we can maintain our republic long enough, time will eventually tell.
Actually, I'm going to show you what their motive was right now. This was a clip that came out about after the hurricane a few weeks ago. Did you know that BlackRock just signed a $90 million contract for lithium in the exact town that was hardest hit by the hurricane? So again, we have a repeat here of Lahaina, don't we?
Yeah.
Who was invested in Lahaina? Was it a BlackRock or Vanguard type of thing?
I don't remember who.
It's been too long now, but it was one of those. It was like a investment institution like that or something, but they had drawn up plans to turn it into a smart city and they had all these investors in it. And then, the people of Lahaina were protesting vehemently of, no, we do not want a smart city here. We don't want this to come here. And they're like, oh, so sorry. Your entire town just got destroyed by a laser from the sky. Don't worry. We'll step in and take over. So we're seeing, I think what we're seeing with Helene and the manipulation of the direction of Helene, which, the PBD podcast just showed these articles from the 60s where they did this with just using dry ice. They were able to completely change their trajectory, a full left turn, which we saw, and it increased in strength. The one thing that clip didn't show was that it was another clip I saw that showed those same P-3 planes doing all these weird flight patterns right in front of the storm and then dipping out of the way right as the storm comes through. And 3 or 4 of them happened, and they showed like each day how the hurricane category increased right after the hurricane passed the zone that the plane had done all those flight pattern circles in. And so it went from a 2 to a 3 to a 4 to a 5. And a bunch of my friends, most notably Alex Zek, began a prayer movement. I was going to be on the call actually on a couple weeks ago, but I had another appointment that night. But they did a group prayer for the hurricane to lose strength on its way. And it dropped from, and I don't know if this was Milton. I think it was Milton, not Helene. Milton dropped from a 5 to a 4 to a 3 within like less than 24 hours. And so, there's some evidence of the power of prayer. But anyway, let's look at what this news report says about the lithium mines in North Carolina that got hit.
Really dependent on one mineral called high purity quartz, and virtually the entire global supply of that quartz comes from one tiny town called Spruce Pine, North Carolina.
Whoa, I didn't catch that, bro. She just said almost the entire supply of lithium in the world? Holy cow, bro.
Monopoly.
That's called a monopoly, my friends, and that's what the power-hungry tyrants look for, if you weren't aware of that.
Now, Spruce Pine saw 2 feet of rainfall from Hurricane Helene, and now nearly a week later, city officials tell me that there's still no water, power, or cell service. The infrastructure is completely disrupted to the point that roads and railways are so torn up that in some areas in the western part of the state, mules are being used to transport materials in and out. So the 2 companies that operate the quartz mines there, that's Zabelco and Quartz Corp, they tell us their work has been shut down since Thursday, and Quartz Corp adds that they have no visibility as to when operations can restart. So the question becomes not just whether the mines themselves have been damaged, but also whether it's possible to get the quartz out. Disruptions would impact not only the $5 billion quartz market, but the $600 billion semiconductor market that depends on it. And that quartz is also used in solar panels, fiber optic cables, and some light bulbs, which could all see some issues as well.
Okay, so we get the point. There's a lot at stake in this town, in these lithium mines, financially speaking, that money-hungry people would want. So it's like, you don't have to look too far to connect some dots of why people would be incentivized to do this. But not only do we know that there's clearly enormous incentive to do this, because of all the money involved, but we now know that there's definitely the technology to do it, going back to the 60s when we had a weather war with Cuba that I wasn't aware of until this week. I don't know about you, Jeremy.
No.
And then I'm going to show these 2. Can you see my screen here with the 2 articles?
Yeah, you're bringing the heat, Aaron.
I'm bringing the heat, bro. Weather Modification and S517, the Weather Modification Research and Technology Transfer Authorization of 2005. For decades, the federal government has dedicated significant resources to weather modification research. Uh-oh.
Oh, man.
And state local governments continue to spend millions on both operational weather modification technologies and weather modification research. This is from, 15, almost 20 years ago now, this article. Mm-hmm. And then here's the second page of this article. Figure 3 illustrates how the sound waves are focused to guide a weather system so that the system makes a turn to the right. Figure 4 illustrates how the weather system may be turned to the left. Under certain conditions, a nation might find it advantageous to create a tornado or hurricane, for example. Creation of a strong storm system could deter an enemy attack. My thoughts on this, which I'm sure are similar to yours, is, okay, if we have all this evidence that our government knows how to use weather modification technology, then it's like, why do we have hurricanes at all hitting our country? You know, maybe the bigger crime here is not that they're manipulating hurricanes to become stronger and move in certain directions to attack certain places. That's obviously a crime. But maybe the bigger crime is that we have had the technology to stop hurricanes from devastating us for 80 years potentially and aren't using it for good. You know, I saw another video that I couldn't find the clip to play on the show for you guys, so I apologize, but it was an older woman from like Denmark, I believe, and she was saying that there hasn't been a major storm in their town in Denmark for like 100+ years because they have these bell towers. And whenever the weather gets bad or they know there's an incoming storm of some kind, they start ringing the bell towers. And she said the sound waves just completely dissipate the storm. And even tornadoes, everything to do with like wind and rain and hurricane type weather. And that's one way, you know we can stop weather is actually through sound technology, potentially even bells. Like how easy would that be to just fix some bells around every city, like big bell towers. And when there's bad weather, like all the bell towers just start going off to scatter the storm energy and dissipate the storm. That's like a super easy way we have. But it's like, are we going to beg the government to make us bell towers to save us from storms? I don't think that's probably going to work because they're probably the ones manipulating them, you know? So again, it's like we the people have to unite, learn about these technologies, and come up with our own solutions. If we know our government isn't going to protect us from hurricanes, we can do it. The universe has given us very simple technologies we can tap into, like sound. And then I think the other one was dry ice. You can actually use dry ice to move storms away from a certain direction pretty easily. So, you know, it's a aspect of our awakening that as we wake up to different forms of corruption and get angry and play the victim, and then eventually we get tired of playing the victim and watching the government not care that we're crying victim all the time, and they're just going to keep doing their psyops on us. Eventually we're like, all right, enough of this. Let's stop crying for their help. Let's just take care of ourselves. And that is a very important advancement in our collective awakening.
Absolutely. Yep, it's all happening for us, and it's going to be an interesting decade. We'll just say that. I have a hunch there's going to be more where that came from, and there's going to be the people that are thinking it's the end of times per usual, and then
right.
There's also going to be the people that recognize that this is somewhat of a cyclical cleansing and awakening, and potentially not the first and potentially not the last. And I think that's the camp that we're in.
Hey, if you enjoyed this short video clip and you want to watch the full podcast episode, you can click right here. And if you want to watch another short clip we think you might also like, you can click right here.